even during the interview process, this is for the board was conducting, they asked me, hey, do you want to be the CEO? And I said, only if you want me to be the CEO. And the feedback I got was, well, but people who want to be CEOs are like, I want to be CEO. I said, look, that's not me. And I remember going and talking to Steve, and he says, yeah, just be yourself. It's too late to change. I think the ability to understand yourself is actually, it's a lifetime's journey, right? It's a journey of your lifetime to really unpack who you are and what you're good at, what makes you tick, what are your passions, is something that, what makes you happy? The question that my mother asked me all the time. And in fact, the older I get, the clearer I am in understanding even what she was asking. And then to be able to understand others. That's also another journey of a lifetime, right? Which is you sort of feel like you understand what others are saying. You understand where they're coming from. I think that's really what is going to perhaps help you with both be true to yourself, your identity, what makes you tick, what makes you happy, while knowing that ultimately, I think a lot of that satisfaction you get is because of your ability to empathize, the ability, it could be your family, it could be your workplace. That's the other thing that I've come to realize is we can be transactional at work. I will tell you, there was this gentleman, another GSB grad whom I worked for, Doug Burgum, who's actually the governor of North Dakota nowadays. But there was this time, in my mid-30s, he said something to me which just had a profound impact. He said, look, you're going to work at Microsoft more time than you are going to even spend with your kids. And I said, oh, wow, that's pretty, that sounds pretty harsh. and yet it is true. And his main point was you better think about work having deeper meaning than being transactional. And as I've thought about that, the only way it's not going to be transactional is when you relate to people you work with. That's what you'll remember. The projects you worked on, the technologies will all be passé in time, but the people, what you did, how you behaved, what was I take great pride in these people whom I've mentored who go on to do great things. That's the relationship that I think you seek out while being true to yourself and what makes you happy. The ability to sort of take diversity and inclusion. Saying the words, saying we're going to make progress is one thing, and then to recognize that progress has to be something that really has to come from one's own first change in behavior, right? And take the everyday experience of the senior leadership team meeting itself. It's an interesting thing. Every time I question myself on everything that we talk about as what we espouse that is more broadly applicable across the company, how much of it is represented in the behaviors, starting with me, of our own senior leadership team? Mm-hmm. We have some very, very amazing women who are part of our leadership team. Are they participating like anybody else? And in fact, am I allowing for them to be able to really make sure that we are listening to them, they are able to feel like they're driving the company? And starting with that type of sensibility, which by the way is not constant, but at least are we pushing, is sort of the way I think I remind myself of how important, to your point about it, sort of putting it everyday practice. We have three things that are the cultural I would say pillars for us, right? One is diversity and inclusion. The other one is customer obsession. And then the other one is to bring the company together as one company as opposed to fragmented set of P&Ls. All three of these are just super hard, easy to say, but require everyday practice, starting with me.
Well, then I just sort of have to ask about TikTok. Tell me what happened there.
It's the strangest thing I've ever sort of worked on.
I figured. It's the strangest thing I've reported.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I learned so much, Kara, about so many things and so many people.
Give it to us.
I mean, one of the things. First of all, you got to remember, TikTok came to us. We didn't go to TikTok.
Right.
It's sort of,
right.
I think the way people talk about it is as if I went looking for TikTok. I mean, TikTok was caught in between a lot of issues they were having across two capitals, and they wanted a partner. And Yiming, whom I'd met a couple of times before, and fundamentally came to us and said, hey, can you be a cloud provider who can help us with these security things that we seem to be hearing about? And that's kind of how it started. But I was pretty intrigued, I must say. It's a great property. Obviously,
Sure.
Everybody seen their growth and what have you, and then I guess the rest is history.
Well, tell me.
I don't know what it's.
What part?
I mean, I
Tell me
remember
about your discussions with Donald Trump. He's gone now for a little while, at least.
President Trump, I think, had sort of a particular point of view on what he was trying to get done there, and then I just dropped off. I mean, it was interesting. There was a period of time when I felt that the USG had some particular set of requirements, and then they just disappeared.
Yeah.
And I'm not part of the USG, so you'll
Right.
have to ask someone there.
Interesting lack of execution. That's interesting. Quality. But what did you want it for? Tell me what you were thinking about it.
Yeah, to me, if we had a chance to both, quite frankly, the place where even if you go to Yiming and ask him, like the thing that attracted him to even talk to Microsoft was all of the stuff we had done around child safety. For example, whenever I think about the investments around social media in particular,
Mm-hmm.
what we are doing in content moderation and child safety
Mm-hmm.
is what would have given us even permission.
Right.
What we were doing with
There are very
Xbox.
few companies who could have done this, correct?
There are a few companies who can, I think, bring a lot. I mean, there's the cloud platform, there's the security infrastructure that was very much required, because if you remember, at least at that time, what was the conversation was the complete fork of the code base, which you then, it's to have the engineers to be able to take over a code base and then to secure it on an ongoing basis. That required competence, and on top of it, you better know something about running a social media, which we know with either it's through Xbox Live or LinkedIn, and so it is an interesting product, and also the way it was engineered, quite frankly, appeals a lot more to me and Microsoft. I think the way it's about design and AI, and I like that.
So, were you surprised Oracle showed up?
I mean, Oracle is a very competent company, and I think that the partnership, at this point, it's all moot, right? I mean,
Right.
I have no idea.
What's happening now.
I have no idea.
Have you called?
No.
Okay. All right. Would you like to acquire TikTok?
At this point, I'm happy with what I have.
How are you thinking about this? Your policy is hybrid, right? Correct? How did you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, Kara, I'd say is we, for sure, have seen tremendous amount of growth. I mean, being a software company, being a cloud company at a time when the most malleable resource that was available for people to continue to operate was digital tech. And so obviously the adoption curves went up across all sectors of the economy.
So did your valuations.
And yeah, I mean, so we're clearly beneficiaries of it. The one thing though, interestingly enough, before we come to sort of our own policy, the interesting thing was during even the early sort of months of the pandemic in 2020, as we were going remote, we needed to really ensure that we were scaling all of our cloud for all the frontline people, whether it was in healthcare or retail or critical manufacturing, because those are the folks who needed. In fact, I always say we are the first responders for all the first responders out there. And even today, in fact, we talk about the hybrid policies of a few tech companies or the tech sector, but in the overall labor market, it's still a very small percentage because most people are actually at work and working. So that said, to your point, right now, at least there's a real structural change, right? Some of the poll data in our own employee base, it's pretty clear. I describe it sometimes as the hybrid paradox, right? Which is there is 70% of the people want to say they want more human connection,
right?
And 70% of people say they want more flexibility. And so therein lies the challenge.
So what do you do?
Yeah, the best thing is to sort of make sure that we build the tools that allow for that flexibility. In fact, the other thing, at least in my own opinion, and the policy at Microsoft is let's not try and make too dogmatic a decision right now on we found the future and this is the future. Let data over time, not data today, but like what are people's expectations of employees has changed. Let's accept that.
Have your employees been more productive?
In fact, all of the metrics, in fact, this is what I feel even where all the metrics will say they've been very productive. In fact, if anything, we want to make sure that things like wellness, we are really being careful because there is, productivity can lead to burnout. How are you managing that? Therefore, the role of a manager has become more important. Interesting enough, when you get to a workplace, say one bad manager could be compensated by just the work environment and a lot of people around the person. Whereas when you're remote, you're very dependent on managerial excellence at all levels. So I do feel that our employees have been very productive. But what is productivity in the long run, right? You just can't say, patents filed or code written or pull requests. Those are all interesting metrics, but I think that it's too early to tell, right?
The concept that made you successful runs out of gas. It's not growing anymore. You now need new capability. And in order to have that new capability, you need a culture that allows you to grow that new capability, right? Our server business was growing strong double digits. It was a high margin business. And you look around, on the other side of the lake, here is a very low margin business called the cloud. And people will look at that and say, why would we do that? When we have such an amazing, fast growing, high margin business. And that, I think, is the challenge. And so to be able to see these secular trends long before they become conventional wisdom, change your business model, change your technology, and change the product is the challenge of business. In tech, it's unforgiving. But quite frankly, now that tech is part of every business, I think all of us have to deal with it.
So you get to be the CEO of this company. You're following two legendary figures. How do you go to them and say, by the way, a lot of things you did, I don't want to do anymore. I'm going to change things.
I was a consummate insider, right? I spent 22 years or so when I became CEO. Growing up in the company that Bill and Steve built, I understood like the back of my palm all the things we got right and all the things we got wrong. And I had a point of view on what I wanted to do if I was going to become CEO.
We now need to make Microsoft thrive in a mobile-first and a cloud-first world.
It was not about trying to criticize our past or praise the past. It was about what do we do in the future.